Good morning and welcome to the Tahoma Unitarian Universalist Service. My name is Sheila Wybrow and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. So I want to say hello to old friends and new friends from faraway places, wherever you may be. We welcome all who are joining us with a longing for community, the hope for peace, and who are seeking justice. We are a diverse congregation which encourages each one who comes through our doors to find their own truth and belief, guided by reason, respect for each other, and by love. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Links to the video version of this service will be posted there this week, as well as on our website. You can find all of our announcements this week in our e-news, and some highlights are: today at 12 p.m., join Doug Taylor for Fourth Sunday Soul Matters deep dive into the theme of the month about being a community of renewal. On Tuesdays at 7 p.m., parents and others raising or living with children or youth during this COVID time are invited to join Nancy Slocum in our weekly parent drop-in Zoom get-together. It's an opportunity to connect with others, share resources, and get support from one another as we support our children during these challenging times. That sounds really good to me. On Wednesday evening, Erin Babcock invites non-pagans for an open discussion and an opportunity to ask your questions about paganism. Next Sunday, October 4th, join us for worship service with Reverend Linda Hart and her message, Who is Saved? A reflection on the miracle arrival of John Murray and the first Universalist sermon in the United States 250 years ago this year, as well as how Universalism changed over time. Look for details on all our gatherings in the weekly e-news that is posted on our church website. And you can find that link to our website in the chat. So even though our building is closed, staff is still working, committees are still zooming along, groups are still meeting and supporting each other, and soon children's programs will be beginning, and Nancy will give more details during the time for all ages. So we want to thank you so much for your ongoing financial support to our congregation. And now, let us prepare to gather in worship.
Good morning. For our opening words today, I'm going to read an untitled poem that I wrote at the beginning of the year before the pandemic, before we knew what was to come this year. And I thought it just might have a little meaning today. Here we are, lying on our backs, as if we are making angels in the snow. Our fingers touch, but we are afraid to move, the ice beneath us, having started to thaw while we slept. How thick is the ice? It is impossible to tell, and it is something out of our control. The morning sun is warming the ice, cracking noises rising in frequency, getting closer by the minute, and we know the end is near. We turn our heads, eyes locking, as the ice gives way and we fall into the unknown.
Please join with me as you're willing and able, as Nancy lights the chalice in our group reading. We light this chalice in deep respect for the mystery and holiness of life, in honor and gratitude for those who have gone before, with love and compassion for those who dwell among us, and with hope and faith for the generations to come.
So sorry about that. That song, I love that song. It always reminds me when my son was about 10 years old and we sang the song in church, and he leaned over to me in the middle of it and he said, "This is a fun song." For a kid who was usually pretty sullen about singing, it was really fun to hear that comment. So So I'm Nancy Slocum. I am the Director of Religious Exploration for Children and Youth here at Tahoma UU Congregation. And as I spoke about last Sunday, given our current restrictions about the closure of our building, the religious education program is switching up what we are offering to our kids and youth this year. Instead of having classes during Sunday morning service, we are going to have a variety of activities and classes that happen through the week. And we are working to get up a web page. I hope to have that up this week that will have information about all the upcoming events. And it will get updated as we get things scheduled. And speaking of scheduling, I'm still looking for people who can help lead and help us develop some of these opportunities for our children and youth. So if there's something that you love, that you're really passionate about, talk to me about it, and let's see if we can figure out a way that it can be shared via Zoom with our kids. My email is pasted into the chat, and you can also find my email on the website. So reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. This is going to be a really exciting and new way to do things here at Tahoma. So I love the ideas that we have coming. So I did want to highlight a few activities that are already on the schedule that are coming up. And again, they will be on our website very soon. Next Sunday, October 4th, we're going to have our kickoff all RE online scavenger hunt, something that kids of all ages can participate in. The very youngest kids might need adults sitting next to them, helping them find items around the house as part of the scavenger hunt. But it should be a lot of fun, and it will be active, not just sitting in front of a Zoom screen. On Friday, October 16th, we are offering all ages. And by all ages for this, I don't mean just kids through teens, all ages, all church. We're going to have an open mic night via Zoom. Our MC is going to be Scott Redman. And think about how you might want to participate. We will have signups available online very soon. If you want to tell a joke, sing a song, play an instrument, read poetry, do a dramatic reading, whatever you want to share in an open mic, just remember we're going to limit it to about 5 minutes per performance, could be less than that. And it needs to be something that is appropriate for all ages. And as Sheila mentioned, I just wanted to highlight our parent drop-in session, our chance to come together, to be in conversation together. Those are weekly at 7 o'clock on Tuesday evenings. So I hope to see all the parents there. So for our time for all ages, I want to talk a little bit about today's topic, the eighth principle. What? I can hear you kids. What, Nancy? You're always talking about 7 principles, not 8. And we do talk about our 7 principles in RE classes quite a bit. For example, we talk about the need to be respectful and kind to everybody. How to work to make our world more fair for everyone. How we keep learning and growing together. These principles are the basis for many of the things we talk about and learn about in our classes. You may be asking, just what is a principle? That's a good question. I had to think about that a little bit. What do we mean when we talk about our principles? And a principle is something that we believe in and want to work towards and we want to support. It's a statement about something that is important to us, something we want to help make true in the world. So for instance, one of our principles is that we care for the earth and for all living things. We believe that we are connected and that by taking care of the earth, we are taking care of ourselves. Do we always take care of the earth? We try to. We may sometimes do things that aren't best for the earth and for all living creatures. But as we learn of things that we're doing that might not be good for the earth, that might be harmful, we try and do better. For instance, we're learning that our use of plastics is polluting the oceans. And it's bad for the animals. So we might decide to reduce our use of plastics. We might make sure that we use a reusable water bottle instead of buying water in plastic bottles that we just throw away and that often end up in our oceans. Doesn't mean we don't still have plastics in our lives, but we keep working towards reducing our use because we believe that it's important to care for the earth and all living things. So here's a question for you. Did you know that these principles aren't just principles for people who attend church here at Tahoma Unitarian Universalist congregation? Did you know that there are Unitarian Universalist churches and congregations all over the United States and in Canada and England and India and in lots of other countries? You can find people who are Unitarian Universalists. And in the United States, many of the different Unitarian Universalist churches have joined together in an association. And an association is simply a group of people who come together to support one another and work together on shared projects. And the association is called, you can probably guess this, the Unitarian Universalist Association, or the UUA. And it is the UUA that developed the 7 principles that we talk about in our classes. I'm not going to go into all the details, but know that a lot of people in the UUA and in Unitarian Universalist congregations around the country worked hard to create our principles. And I imagine a lot of people spent a lot of time talking about what they should be, and they probably had lots of meetings and lots of discussions. And eventually everyone got to vote on whether or not we would have these as our principles. So when they first came up with the principles, they came up with the first 6. And as a reminder, I'm just going to read our principles. The first 6 say, we believe that each and every person is important, that all people should be treated fairly and kindly, that we should accept one another and keep on learning together, that each person must be free to search for what is true and right in life, that all persons should have a vote about things that concern them, and we believe in working for a peaceful, fair, and free world. 6 principles. Wait, only 6? That's right, at first there were only 6. But after a while, there were people who said, wait a minute, we also believe that we're connected to all life on earth, and we need to make sure that we are taking care of it. And the people who thought it was important, they worked hard to get it added to the other 6. A person can't just say, I think I'll add a new principle to the Unitarian Universalist principles. Because remember, one of our principles is that everyone should have a voice and everyone should have a vote on the things that concern them. So after a lot of meetings and a lot of discussions, and I imagine a lot of rewriting, all the people who were discussing it proposed it to the Unitarian Universalist Association. And there was probably more discussions. And then eventually people had a chance to vote and they adopted our 7th principle. And now it's part of our principles. We believe in caring for our planet Earth and the home we share with all living things. Remember back at the beginning, though, I said we're talking today about an 8th principle. We don't have an 8th principle. Not yet, but we might get one sometime soon. But there is work happening on it. A group of people have gotten together and they have proposed that we consider an 8th principle. And in a nutshell, what that says is that, in part, that we're going to work to abolish. Abolish means to get rid of. We're going to work to abolish racism and oppression in our world. We've talked here about racism before. Racism is when people are treated badly and treated unfairly simply because of the color of their skin. And oppression is when a group of people are not allowed to have the same rights as other people. Sometimes because they have a different skin color or because they come from a different culture. And sadly, we still see lots of racism and oppression in our world and in our country. There are a lot of times in a lot of different ways where people are not treated fairly and not given the same rights as others. We've talked about Black people and brown people and other people of color not being treated fairly. This new principle not only says that we need to treat them fairly, but that we need to actively work, really work hard to change this. You might be thinking that the principles we already have tell us to do that, because we already believe in working for a peaceful, fair, and just world. And we have a principle that says every person is important. And maybe that covers it. Or maybe when it comes to ending racism and oppression in our world, we need to say very clearly that we're going to work on this. Maybe we need to say that we will work to end racism. We're going to have to watch and see what happens. There's a lot of talk going on, a lot of conversation is going to happen. A lot of people are deciding whether or not to adopt this 8th principle. I will keep you posted what happens. And whether we add the 8th principle or not, I want to remind all of us that if we see racism happening, if we see people not being treated fairly, we all have our voices to speak up. We can say something. We can say something to the person who's behaving in a racist way. Hey, that's not cool. Or, I don't like it when you treat people badly just because of the color of their skin. Or if we can't say it directly, we can tell someone, we can tell a trusted adult, a parent, a teacher, a family member. We all have our voices to speak up against racism, and that is a very important and a very good thing to do. That is our time for all ages. I will now speak the words that we sing to you as you leave our sanctuary to go to classes. We hold you in our love as you go, as you go. May your heart be at peace as you go. To nurture the spark of your precious life, we hold you in our love as you go. Thank you.
Now is the time that we offer our monetary gifts to the work of this congregation. While we are apart, we have suspended the Share the Plate offerings. The money we give is an integral part in keeping our staff, who are working tirelessly to keep our community strong and keep our building running and keep Zoom flowing with all of these activities for all of us. In these volatile and unprecedented times, that even though we are physically apart, our gifts are stronger together. You can text or click the link in the chat to make your contribution. And as we dedicate our offering, I ask you to join with me in the dedication reading. We dedicate ourselves and our offerings to the work of this congregation, weaving a tapestry of love we call community, both within and beyond these walls.
Our reading for today is titled, Listening in the Tempest. Be not afeared, the isle is full of noises, sounds, and sweet airs that give delight and hurt not. Sometimes 1,000 twangling instruments will hum about mine ears, and sometimes voices that, if I had waked after long sleep, will make me sleep again. And then in dreaming, the clouds methought would open and show riches, ready to drop upon me, that when I waked, I cried to dream again. When Caliban speaks these words in Shakespeare's Tempest, he is longing for the sweet memory of his, and by extension, our dreams. Dreams of magic, of beautiful magic, of music, of riches, of voices whispering to us in our slumbers. I have dreams, dreams of a just world, a world in which the color of our skin, the birthplace of our ancestors, our gender, our sexual attractions, our religious beliefs, our wealth at birth, do not diminish our ability to live a just and equitable life. In July 2020, we lost two great social justice leaders, C.T. Vivian and John Lewis. Both were ministers, and both were instrumental in leading the nonviolent movement toward civil rights. But I worry that the dreams that they fought for the rights that, in the case of both Vivian and Lewis, were paid for with blood, are being eroded. They're being lost to a society that believes in grievance more than justice. But I am listening. I am listening for the voices that will carry on these dreams, who will take on the mantle of leadership. Who will take on a mantle of leadership on a national stage? Who will have the vision to bring justice to the forefront? Who will give voice to the dreams of these iconic leaders now numbered among the ancestors? Miranda, again from Shakespeare's Tempest, and ever the optimist, says during the course of the play, "Oh, brave new world that has such people in it." The voices of justice are here, marching in the streets, leading protests, writing in braver spaces, speaking truths for this age. We just need to listen deeply, and give them a respect born of the work they are doing. Indeed, this is a brave new world filled with incredible people doing the work of our ancestors.
For our meditation today, I'd like you to sit back, get comfortable, really push your feet into the carpet or onto the ground in front of you. And I want you to sit and either close your eyes or look at the flame of our chalice and consider please, how will you live into justice? What peace will you be in the world to bring about the magic, to bring about the call forward for hope that is real and tangible for all? Please meditate and think on that. Open your ears, your heart, and your mind as we prepare to look at justice forward.
Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is more than just a slogan. Black Lives Matter is more than just a Zoom avatar that turns on when I shut my video down. Several weeks ago, another black man, Jacob Blake, was shot in Kenosha, Wisconsin, 7 shots to the back, and now he still lies in a hospital bed, paralyzed and fighting for his life. A couple of weeks before that, Anthony McLean was fatally shot in Pasadena, California, just a ways down the highway from where I live. And this last week, no charges were filed in the shooting death of Breonna Taylor. When does the killing stop? It's been a year of lamentation, a year of vigils, protests, and marches, all while a pandemic ravages this nation and the rest of the world. A year of church services in our faith and others that have sometimes dealt with the violence against Black, Indigenous, and other people of color or members of the LGBTQIA+ community. I am thankful that we say the names of those killed by police, that we hold moments of silence in their honor, that we light candles commemorating their lives. But I'm not sure that's enough in this time, in this place, in the face of this recurring violence. At the end of August, as the NBA playoffs were supposed to be happening in Florida, the protests in Kenosha became significantly more dangerous as armed vigilantes worked to assist the police in keeping the peace. Of course, it wasn't peaceful. A 17-year-old shot 3 people, killing 2 of them. After the shooting, this young man, or child, if you will, raised his hands and walked away from the scene of the crime, past police cars, being followed by a journalist who had filmed the occurrence almost in its entirety. After this, the 17-year-old drove back to Illinois, where he was arrested a day later and charged with 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide. The Milwaukee Bucks were in the playoffs that week. And if you have watched any basketball from that period of time, you may have seen or not seen the game that day after Jacob Blake's shooting. If you haven't seen the video of the refs standing around on an empty court in a futile wait for the Bucks, who had decided to boycott the game, it's a strange sight. A basketball arena first made empty by fans by COVID-19, and then made emptier by the team's decision to forego an important game. Milwaukee is only about 45 minutes away from Kenosha, and about 3 of every 4 players in the NBA is Black. Doc Rivers, coach of the Los Angeles Clippers, said this in response to the boycott by the Bucks. And we should note this was also during the week of the Republican National Convention. He said, "All you hear is Donald Trump and all of them talking about fear. We're the ones getting killed. We're the ones getting shot. It's amazing why we keep loving this country, and this country does not love us back. It's really so sad. Like, I should just be a coach. I am so often reminded of my color. It's just really sad. We've got to do better, but we've got to demand better." Rivers goes on to talk further about the police and defunding. The unions have to be taken down in the police force. My dad was a cop. I believe in good cops. We're not trying to defund the police and take all their money away. We're trying to get them to protect us, just like they protect everybody else. There are 3 main points made by Rivers. First, the fear-mongering done primarily by conservative politicos at the expense of Black people. Second, a recognition of the true state of race relations in this country. Third, the need for an evaluation of the concept of just who is being protected and served by the police. Rivers' emotional response to Kenosha goes deeply into the bifurcation in this country between white people and Black people, as well as other people of color. His tears, whether of sad or rage, provide a lens into the depth of feeling of what he might be feeling as his vulnerable words come out. LeBron James put it a little more bluntly on Twitter. And I've removed or edited some of the words, but bear with me. "F this, man. We demand change. Sick of it. And y'all wonder why we say what we say about the police. Someone please tell me WTF is this. Exactly another Black man being targeted. This stuff is so wrong and so sad. Feel so sorry for him, his family, and our people. We want justice." LeBron was going to sit out the rest of the playoffs, but former US President Barack Obama talked him into continuing to play, and that was a key thing in getting the NBA to even continue playing at that point. And he also tweeted the following in support of the walkout and boycott. He said, I commend the players on the Bucks for standing up what they believe in, coaches like Doc Rivers, and the NBA and WNBA for setting an example. It's going to take all our institutions to stand up for our values. He says, again, it's going to take all our institutions to stand up for our values. The institutions he's talking about go beyond just sports leagues, but like the NBA, Major League Baseball, or the NFL. He's also talking about any of our community organizations, our state and local governments. I'm not going to mention the federal government right now because I just can't. Maybe after November 3rd, but not today. And he's also talking about churches. Churches like yours, the one that I attend, faiths like Unitarian Universalism, faiths that have historically taken a stand in support of the rights of all. Admittedly, we Unitarian Universalists have not always succeeded in establishing our institutions as structures of equity, but we have tried and we are trying. When Matthew Taylor spoke here at Tahoma UU earlier this year, it was during the summer, I think, at the end of June or beginning of July, he spoke about the 7 principles we hold so dear in Unitarian Universalism, asking you to think about them in regards to the America we find ourselves in today. I quote from his sermon. There are some hard truths that we have to address. They're hard, uncomfortable, and still they are the truth. We have to admit that America exists as a place of societal turmoil, class warfare, and political upheaval. We have to admit that implicit bias and systemic white supremacy inhabit all corners of this country. We have to acknowledge that issues such as the immigration and asylum crisis, police brutality, and attacks on LGBTQIA+ people's rights are a bellwether pointing toward a fundamental change in our democracy. Lastly, as UUs in an ever-changing world, we can ensure that our principles reflect the current state of the world and our moral place in it. All right, end quote. Now, as we know from our UU history, as Nancy was giving us during Time for All Ages, that we have heard about for maybe years and years, if we've attended GAs, maybe GAs back in the day when the principles were being voted on, the 7 principles are intended not to be an ahistorical, static document that we learn as a catechism that simply repeats what parents and grandparents recited and gets passed down to younger generations over the course of ages. No, the 7 principles are intended to be a living document that changes over time. As Nancy said, the 7 principles started as the 6 principles with the 7th added in the mid-80s, as well as the changes to the language of each principle through the 70s and 80s that were done to make them more inclusive. Specifically, the vision for the UU principles was for review approximately every 15 years, and that changes were to be welcomed as realities shift, and the needs of the world call for different words or novel viewpoints. Or to put it bluntly, we might have missed something. I love the 7 principles. They, along with the 6 sources, are one of the things that drew me toward our faith. Unitarian Universalism is fairly unique in this living tradition of non-creedal belief. But as I said a moment ago, we might have missed something. A year ago, almost exactly, sitting with Matthew Taylor at the Turning the Tides Social Justice Workshop at DeBenneville Pines, our local UU camp here in Southern California, as Matthew led a workshop on the 7 principles, it was apparent that the 7 principles exist differently for each of us. Each of our differing spiritual beliefs provide a different lens of interpretation as to what the principles mean. Which religion we were raised in, our educational background, how much money we make, our ancestral heritage, the color of our skin, our gender identity, our sexual attractions, the job we do every day, our age, whether we have children. Each of these parts of who we are open up the principles for interpretation. And through that interpretation, we each choose to live the 7 principles out a different way. Concurrent with the start of the Black Lives Matter movement in 2013, when Trayvon Martin's killer was acquitted of murder, some Unitarian Universalists on the East Coast started engaging with concepts of racial equity in our faith. This is a topic that has been around since the Black empowerment tragedy, renamed as such by Reverend Mark Morrison Reed from the Black empowerment controversy of the late 60s and 70s. And then the 1992 resolution of immediate witness called us to affirm and support this vision of a racially diverse and multicultural Unitarian Universalism. But this led to resolutions passed at General Assembly in 1994 and 1997 that called us to become an anti-racist, multicultural faith community. But saying you are something is much different than doing the work to become that thing. So this 2013 work, coming as it did on the heels of the acquittal of Trayvon Martin's killer, focused on a call to action to do the work of dismantling oppressions. And thus, the 8th principle was born. I'm going to read it to you. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote, and here's the beginning of the actual principle, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. But wait, Erik, someone might say to me, isn't all of that essentially included in our 7 principles? Why, yes, I would reply in this hypothetical discussion, but it isn't explicit. And in this time of police killings of Black men and women, and having the highest leadership within our land espouse racist tropes, we need to do more. From the website, 8thprincipleuu.org, I quote, "Our existing 7 principles imply this 8th principle, but do not explicitly hold us accountable for addressing these oppressions directly, especially at the systemic level. When added to my thoughts on the personal interpretability of the 7 principles, this is the best description I've found for why the addition of the 8th principle could create the beloved community called forth by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. The 8th principle was presented to the General Assembly Planning Committee by Paula Cole Jones, one of the 2 writers of the 8th principle, the other being Bruce Pollock Johnson, in 2013. In 2017, it was voted into committee at General Assembly, but I can find no further information as to its status. According to the UU Church of Columbia, Maryland, as of the spring of 2020, the 8th principle has been adopted by 18 UU congregations, 1 religious education program, and 2 affiliate UU groups. And the UU Church of Columbia was doing this work as part of their effort at their annual meeting in June, collecting all this information to understand where it kind of fit into the landscape before they voted on adopting it themselves. So some of these organized churches and the religious education program, some of them include All Souls Church Unitarian in Washington, D.C., and the UU Church of Restoration in Philadelphia. These were the two churches key in the development of the eighth principle. There's First Unitarian Church of Honolulu, the UU Church of Annapolis in Maryland, UU Church of Lexington, Kentucky, First UU of Lubbock, Texas, Magic Valley UU Fellowship in Twin Falls, Idaho, UU Church of Delaware County in Pennsylvania, and Covenant UU, an online covenanting community. Just to say, they're all over the place. They span our country. There are more churches that have done this. As I said, there's around 20, 21 churches and other UU affiliated groups that have done this. But there's no centralized list of those congregations who have adopted it. This is a grassroots movement. This grassroots movement has started a discussion within our larger faith community about what it means to do the work of anti-racism and dismantling oppression in all of its forms. Well, our beloved Conversations workshops started us, Unitarian Universalists, on a path towards wholeness. They were by no means the end of the journey. I believe that we should be talking about the eighth principle and the power it holds to move our faith tradition towards a place of accountability when it comes to doing the work. I'm going to read it again for you. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying toward spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. What do we do with these words? Well, we can sit with them for a while. Sit with them. Let the words percolate within our souls. We can recall them the next time we see thousands of people massing in our streets, protesting another tragedy, another death, another affront to human dignity. We, if we are white, can think about what it means to be Black in America, where any encounter with a police officer holds the risk of violence and tragedy. We can think about how this might affect those we know and love, and how it affects us, regardless of the color of our skin, when we live in a society where racism and oppression are the defining characteristics of many of the institutions around us. We can hold the eighth principle in our hearts the next time someone asks us why we are a Unitarian Universalist. A few weeks ago, during one of the massive heat waves that we seem to be having regularly here on the West Coast, I was fortunate to spend a few days out of the heat, relaxing in the mountains. A friend of mine came up to visit for a spell, getting out of the heat themselves and enjoying some time away from the city. That evening, my friend headed to a mini mart for a snack. A few minutes later, I received a call that some guys in a pickup truck with large Trump flags hanging off the cab were saying weird stuff to my friend, making comments about my friend's Blackness. Not overtly racist or violent comments, but more like creepy, this might be bad kind of stuff. I had a moment of terror during that phone call, envisioning the worst, but simply said, get your snack and head on back here. The truck, probably randomly given the nature of the area in which we were staying, followed my friend for a bit before turning onto a different road. Racism and oppression exist everywhere. Take a vacation in a small mountain town, it happens there. Go shopping at any big box store, it happens there. Attend a progressive educational institution, it happens there. Interview for a job, it happens there. Apply for a mortgage, it happens there. Get pulled over by the police, it definitely happens there. Perhaps when we hold in our hearts words such as those in the 8th principle, we can get a little better each day, recognizing all those small and large instances of racism and oppression that exist in the world. And by recognizing them, we can start doing the work of countering them with acts of love and justice. Perhaps it would be easier to apply the 7 principles to this if we had the accountability of the 8th principle. May it be so. Be Shalai and Amen. As we set our intentionality this morning, I want us to hold the heaviness of this work in our hearts, acknowledging that it is necessary, but not always easy. There is a duality as we move toward the work of anti-racism and dismantling oppression in understanding the goodness of the work, but also understanding that it is hard work. If we listen to the words of Lao Tzu from the Tao Te Ching 2nd chapter, perhaps we can hold the heaviness with a little more grace, compassion, and empathy. Under heaven, all can see beauty as beauty only because there is ugliness. All can know good as good only because there is evil. Therefore, having and not having arise together. Difficult and easy complement each other. Long and short contrast each other. High and low rest upon each other. Voice and sound harmonize each other. Front and back follow each other. Therefore, the sage goes about doing nothing, teaching no talking. The 10,000 things rise and fall without cease, creating yet not possessing, working yet not taking credit. Work is done, then forgotten, therefore it lasts forever. Blessed be and amen. And now as we go out into the world and we take all that we have experienced today in this service, let us hold, yes, the difficulty of the work, the challenge of the work, but also the goodness of the work. And realize that even though there isn't officially an 8th principle now, its accountability and its message is something that we can use to tie with the 7 principles as we make the world a better place. Blessed be and amen.
Please read along with the words in the chat as you are willing and able, as Nancy kindly extinguishes the chalice in our sanctuary. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And also please sing along with Asher for the closing blessing song in all of its grace and beauty to remind us as we go forward to do the work.
Here I receive, to you I give, together we share, and of this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and of this we live.